Wet wipes, I'm so anti.
Oh,
I know
really?
people
Oh,
here
yeah.
are
What's
gonna-
wrong with that?
At the end of the day, what I see is
Yeah.
people coming to the office with herpes outbreaks from the wipes.
Really?
shit.
Lots of
dude.
it. Totally. I see a ton of kids coming to me using the wipes with herpes and anal wart breakout.
Okay, we are here with Dr. Evan Goldstein, author of But Seriously, the definitive guide to anal health, pleasure, and everything in between. Thanks for being here with us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So you're a butt surgeon.
Yes.
You started out as a heart surgeon, or you were initially wanted to go into surgery on the heart? Did you actually?
Training. Actually started
Okay.
training, was miserable. Said
For the heart?
Yeah, I just was like, I just can't. I can't deal with it. It was the different times. Also, things were becoming much more less invasive. So a lot of open heart surgery was kind of diminishing, and I just didn't feel
It
like
didn't
that
give you
was
the thrill,
calling
you know?
as
I
the
can't be a
ass.
superstar with the heart, but I can with the butt.
That's it. That's it.
So if I want surgery on my butt and I want to go to you, what kinds of things would I go to you for my butt?
Most of the things I see are a lot with what's called tears, which are called anal fissures. So especially in women, you have, the skin is so thin. So when you're thinking in that area of just pooping, sex,
Yeah.
it's obviously a lot of pressure.
Is it thinner than a guy's?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
are you serious?
Yeah.
I did go to the ER once for an anal injury. I was bleeding out.
So-
and I was like, uh-oh.
And it happens. And so the skin is, and I also see it in male to female. So trans, when that are taking estrogens, spironolactones, it starts to thin the skin. They look beautiful, but anally, it creates
Not
much more
beautiful.
tears.
Now, do you think this is God saying women weren't meant for anal?
No. I think
Okay.
that the
All right. I
key-
think some people would argue that.
I think,
darn.
I think the key really is just like anything, like going to the gym, and when you and I are lifting weights, we get calluses on our hands from the bar.
Right.
By using toys and understanding the anatomy locally, muscle and skin, you can actually build healthy tissue so it's stronger.
Okay, so we can thicken the skin of our buttholes.
You totally could.
Wow. Very exciting.
But women, I mean, you know, men can experience like a more heightened level of pleasure anally than a woman. So like, what is your argument for sexual play with an asshole when you're a woman?
So I think
Because it just seems painful for us most of the time. I mean, obviously you can build up to it, but like,
You
is
need a couple
there
glasses of whiskey.
something we're really missing if we're not?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, it shouldn't be painful,
Right.
And I think a lot of it, and the reason why I'm on talks like this, is to dispel a lot of these myths.
Sure.
That there should not be pain. There shouldn't be blood. It should
Yeah.
be.
There will not be
it
blood.
should be pleasurable.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in women, even if you don't have a prostate, there is this A zone,
Mm-hmm.
and the A zone, tapping into that one, the pleasure zone is there, and so,
Really?
totally.
So
And-
I will say, and I've talked about this years and years ago on the podcast because it shocked me. But I was playing with a vibrator one day. I was like 23 or something, and I was like, whoa! And I put it on my butt, and I was like, wait, why does this feel good? And I had like an orgasm there, which was very weird. It's only happened one time, and I was like, whoa, that's weird. But I'm like, well, how did that happen?
Well, there's positive nerve endings, very similar to like nipple play, right?
Okay.
And you look at a lot of erogenous zones that we have.
Yeah.
The anal cavity has that, and it has that capacity. I think the key is to understand and educate on what is anatomy.
Yeah.
How do you understand you can't go from nothing to something huge?
Foreplay.
Yeah, and also like I always talk a lot about self-play and analysis, right? It's really important for us to look at how do you actually play with yourself? What is your own anatomy?
Yeah.
How do you kind of, we know there's 3 groups of different asses.
Oh,
The first ass group, which is about a third of people, can actually take whatever they want whenever they want. Their hole completely opens.
I like that you said that as if, you know, everyone knows this.
No,
But
I'm just
Butts
like-
101. No,
and you
I need
don't
a
know.
pen.
It's just the luck of the draw.
And then 2/3 of people have issues where either the muscle doesn't fully relax,
Right.
or the skin is too fragile.
Okay.
And so what you're trying to do is by using toys, by using anal dilators, what you're doing is you're going from small, medium, and large to kind of understand your own anatomy. And I say a lot of what I do is 60% functional, 40% mental. A lot of it is the mental game of how do I learn to control the anal muscles, the skin, the experience, and being able to kind of get yourself into a place of pleasure.
So there's no Kegels for the butt, are there?
Tons. I think a couple of things on the Kegel stuff.
I'm doing them right now.
We know that women's pelvises have the capacity to open more potential pregnancy. So I do a lot of anal Botox work, which we can talk about. But anal Botox relaxes one of the muscles inside.
Wow.
It's much more effective in the male pelvis because the male muscle is so much more developed. It's so tighter in that space. So a lot of males that are engaging anally, they feel restricted in that 2/3 of people that don't engage well.
Yeah.
The reality is by giving anal Botox, you bring the pressure down. You allow that muscle to relax so that they can start using the toys and dilate more. So in women's pelvises, a lot of women don't need that. It's more of how do we just get all the muscles to learn to open together?
Yeah.
And then how do we get the skin to be strong enough so that if someone gets behind you, you don't tear, you don't have hemorrhoids, you don't have other issues.
And so you get the issues that can come up with your butt, skin tags.
Skin tags.
How do those happen?
Yeah, so it's either a fissure, so you either had a tear, and the way that the tear heals, it heals out. It grows extra tissue in that space. So that's one. The other is hemorrhoids. Hemorrhoids are these veins. So if you're sitting too long on the bowl, you're pushing too much, you're constipated, you're at the gym doing too much squat, kettlebell, CrossFit, Peloton stuff, you can develop these swellings. And so what happens is the skin stretches. And when the skin stretches, after the hemorrhoid, after the swelling goes away, the skin is left with that extra tissue in the space. So not pretty, and also limits people functionally.
Right.
You know,
can't just do anything willy-nilly with your butthole.
Yeah, and if you have something sticking out there and someone wants to lick it, and they see that, it becomes somewhat of an issue.
Are there health obstacles one encounters when licking a butt? Because,
Totally.
It feels like asking for some disease.
When he said it's 40% mental, I go, for me, I'm 90% mental.
Yeah.
So I think a couple of things on the licking side, for sure. I mean, obviously, feces itself, if it's
very
dirty,
unhealthy.
has bacteria, the good, the bad, the ugly. So you always want to make sure that it's clean, whether you're doing just external or you're doing douching and kind of cleansing with the right tools. With that being said, I think herpes is a huge one that we see a lot of. I see a lot of herpes type 1, even though herpes 2 is considered genital. In the anal space, because we lick, we suck, we play, I actually see a lot more herpes type 1.
Okay.
And those are little ulcerations. It can be quite painful and irritating. So again, if you have something on your tongue or you have something where you feel like you have a cold sore, not the best time to be licking your partner's ass.
Okay, so when you do have a cold sore, you shouldn't go down on anybody.
You shouldn't, no.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, unless you rule in or out that indeed is a herpes, most of the time you have an active infection, and then that could be transmitted. Same thing from an HPV perspective, like anal warts or genital warts. You can transmit simply just from that as it relates to analingus and anal play. And then the bigger ones are more like parasites. So if someone doesn't know that they have a parasite, they're not really seeing that they're having diarrhea or GI issues. If they harbor that and then you're licking them, you can potentially get that. So you want to be careful. But analingus is fun.
Wow.
It's enjoyable.
Right. I mean, I've had it done, and then you're like, okay. Want to make sure we're all showered and clean. And it is enjoyable. It just does seem like I've engaged in anal play with men in the past, and their reaction was 5 stars. 5 stars. But I've never, as a woman, I've never gotten there with butt stuff.
Got it.
But yeah.
Well,
I think the key though, when you're thinking about anal for how could it stimulate vaginal, right? It's interesting when you look at the the vagina and the uterus and the anal and the rectum, they're basically abutting each other.
Right.
No pun
Sure.
intended, right? And in the male is the prostate in between. But because the prostate's gone, you actually have a lot of overlap with that. So a lot of women that can't necessarily, first of all, they talk about like the posterior clitoris, the clitoris behind, also the angle of how people are entering.
Yeah.
They can actually sometimes get more
Get that
off
butt going.
from anal because it stimulates from a completely different angle.
Yeah, I can see that.
Than as you would regular. Same thing with like DP or using toys anally and then a vaginal or vice versa. So I think the key is, is to really understand that there's a tremendous amount of pleasure zones, whether you want to go there or not, and whether your anatomy is what's restricting or not.
Right.
If mentally you want someone in your ass, there's nowadays ways that we can get you to enjoy that.
We can make that happen.
Did you see this? So there was a video that, a couple male comics showed me several years ago of basically like, this is porn, a woman who put like a metal cylinder in her ass and then someone ate cereal out of it. And my biggest concern was how deep can the cereal go, and is there too far that it could go, and then what would happen? Now, I understand how the cylinder goes in. That was not the part. I think that's the part most most would find perplexing. That didn't faze me at all. It was like, how deep can a Fruit Loop go, and is there a point that's too far?
Was the cylinder, did it have an end to it, or it was just to open the cavity? Because it was like a dish going in.
They had milk.
No, but right? They had milk, but it seemed like it was kind of like something you would use to like cut Christmas cookies. So there was no top or bottom.
Got it.
And it was just like this well of milk, and then it's also like how what's the volume of milk that it takes to fill an asshole? These are the questions I had.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I think that this is great. So from an anatomical perspective, there is a bend in the cavity. So it just kind of depends, especially in women, because we were talking about not having the prostate.
Right.
So what happens is, let's say you're going
for Fruit Loops.
Yes. It's for Fruit Loops.
That's what that's for. They didn't teach that in school.
So if you're going in, then there's a bend. And it must be that even though there wasn't a back to stop it, it must have been positioned in a way that there was actually the tissue of the rectum was abutting the end of it.
Wow.
But it can go pretty far. Now, Fruit Loops...
Because every ER doctor I've ever talked to, I'm like, how many people have come in with stuff up their butt? And they're like, so many. I'm like, what is this fascination?
Fruit Loops would basically like disintegrate and then you can just shit them out.
Yeah.
But like bigger toys, like bigger things, the problem is that a lot of the toy industry doesn't have easily retrievable devices.
They don't have a tampon string.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think
I'll get that string,
so
baby.
what winds up happening is that it goes
Your asshole
in,
eats it.
and then and then the pressures, and then you freak the fuck out.
Yeah.
So
Right,
then
and then
you
you
try to push it in, and then all of a sudden it goes past that angle, and
Point
then
of
you
no
need
return.
Point of no return, and then you need assistance.
Have you had patients? Have you had patients with stuff stuck in there?
Sure, I have.
Wow.
But I think nowadays, there's a lot more that goes into kind of toy development and a lot more that goes into stuff where it's easily retrievable. It has bases. You're able to now choose products that support the way you're engaging.
Yeah.
But just to know that it happens, and you just got to suck it up and say, "Get this out of my hole."
Right.
Get
It
this
seems
out
like
of
there
my
should be
hole.
technology where like every butt toy has a
Like a tag?
magnet in it, and then you have a really strong magnet, like in case of emergency, put this. Like, so how do you know when something has gone too far up your butt that you need medical assistance?
Well, I think anything that's up in there that's big that you don't think can
can't get
just
out.
come out with like a normal, appropriate poop, you're not going to get that out. And then what happens is it kind of turns and then it goes above and you're fucked.
Oh, like that.
And that just becomes an issue. And then the key is to not push it further.
Yeah.
Is to really seek help sooner rather than later, because the second you push it further, a lot of times they can't do it through colonoscopy, like through a small instrument. Sometimes they have to cut open the belly and then retrieve that. So it's
Not worth it.
It's definitely not worth it.
Not worth getting off. Speaking of poop, I know that's a real indicator of your health. What should we look out for? Like I think we all look at it, right? Like that's normal. But like, what are we looking for? What are good things? What are bad things?
I think I always look at dogs taking a shit on New York streets.
Yeah.
And like, it looks so easy, right? It's soft. It's congealed.
Yeah, it's just like soft serve ice cream.
It comes out, minimal wiping.
Yeah.
Right? And
Zero.
then they just, and then
Unless they itch and it's on your carpet.
Yeah. And then they just go on with their day. And that is, to me, you know, there's scales, there's a Bristol scale, and it goes over like from liquidy to pellety to formed.
Pellety, yikes.
And going from there. I think, you know, using appropriate fiber supplementation, using pre and probiotics. I started a company called Future Method, which is all about products to support the way we engage, not only sexually, but just from a shitting perspective. And so, again, using things, we don't want things too hard that you're straining.
Right.
But we also want things, especially in New York, everybody's got irritable bowel and stressed the fuck
busy
out.
people.
So it's like, always, I have to
Yeah.
shit 3, 4, 5 times a day, and that's just not.
How many times is
What?
normal, or how many times is optimal? I would
I
say.
think it depends on each body. We know that women definitely poop less than men.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But with that being said, you know, you have to take your own poop into your own hands. I mean, I think the key is less is always more. And how do you just do the business, less wiping, get up? Because the more you pooping, the more you wipe. The more you wipe, the more irritated.
Right, and
then it just
sometimes you're
plays into
wiping
it.
for a long time, and you're
Totally.
like, "What the fuck is this?"
Totally. I'm a huge bidet fan.
Yeah.
They're super cheap, super easy to install.
Yeah.
I think it's, or just pop in the shower. You know,
Yeah.
soap, water. Wet wipes, I'm so anti.
Oh,
I know
really?
people
Oh,
here
yeah,
are
what's
gonna-
wrong with that?
So the problem is we spoke of kind of the microbiome.
Yeah.
When you're using these wipes, it gets rid of the good and the bad bacteria being in equilibrium.
Okay.
So with that being said, people love the wipes because especially
It just
like
feels
if you're
better. You feel
and like you're
cleaner.
here, you're you know, you got to go to a random bathroom and
Yeah.
you're like, you know, you want to clean yourself.
Because the ones meant for wiping your butt are specifically antibacterial.
So what happens is that realistically they say they're all made for the butt and they say they're hypoallergenic.
Right.
I don't know, is it moisture? Is it the product ingredients?
Okay.
Or is it the fabric? I can't tell.
Something
because
is-
Because I was gonna say, what happens a lot for me is I run out of the butt ones, and then I just
the
move
vagina
into
ones?
makeup wipes on my butt. And is
you
there
can get irritated.
No, I don't get irritated.
Oh.
So I go, maybe I've actually been doing better because I'm not. Maybe those makeup ones aren't killing the good bacteria.
Yeah, you know, I don't know the right answer to it.
No, who does?
But I think at the end of the day, what I see is
Yeah.
people coming to the office with herpes outbreaks from the wipes.
Really?
shit.
Lots of
dude.
it. Totally. I see a ton of kids coming to me using the wipes with herpes and anal wart breakout. And the
What?
first
Can you
thing
get
I
it from the
say,
wipes?
so what happening is we all have herpes and HPV. We all do.
Oh.
Most of us have low risk types of HPV and or have the herpes type 1. But your body is able to fight the immune issue.
Oh,
But when you're using the
So
wipes,
it's just like latent in your body?
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And so when you're using the wipes, what happens is for some reason the immune system is fucked, right? It changes the dynamic. So then
That's very
I see
interesting.
literally,
Wow.
and then you stop the wipes, boom, all the shit goes
Whoa.
out. So I would say, and then people are like, oh yeah, well, we use it for fucking babies. Why isn't it good for our butt? And I said, well, actually, you use them for babies when they're babies, but as kids start getting older, you see a lot of parents use the wipes for their face and they wind up breaking out and they have a lot of acne and other components to it. It's the same thing that happens anally. You just want to be careful with that.
No, wait.
Yeah.
Do you think the same thing is possible for breakouts on the face using makeup wipes?
I think a lot of that is totally.
I'm just sitting here thinking
yeah.
I
that
have like a
shit,
little,
doc.
kind of like these little things, and I don't know where they're coming from. Like maybe it's
Makeup
the makeup
wipes.
wipes.
Totally. I just
Those
think that again, it's
motherfuckers.
like those motherfuckers is right. I just think that you have to just think of
Micellar
what are
water.
you using and how do you work backwards and just take away one thing. Is it the brush you're using? Is it the certain type of makeup?
Sure.
Is it the wipes? But I see a lot of people with wipe-induced issues.
Wow. Darn, I wish the wipes didn't feel so great. Gotta get a bidet.
Wow.
Question
Yeah.
because you're a medical person. Why can't guys get tested for HPV?
They can, and I do it in the office all the time.
What the fuck? All right, so I'm going to stop with that rumor because I thought there was not a test
It's
for
like
men.
male birth control. They can, but they won't, you know?
It's a swab.
Yeah.
So it's hard to kind of, from an anal perspective, if people are engaging anally, you can swab. And I swab all the time. I mean, of my practice, every day I'm swabbing.
Yeah.
And you could swab it's paneled. Most of the time we don't test anymore for low risk HPV because everyone has it. So it's kind of a waste of a test.
Okay.
It's more of high risk. So there's 16, 18, 31, 33. There are different types of HPV.
Also, do you hear this? A girl who wrote in a couple weeks ago about the HPV having a meltdown. See, this is exactly what we told you. Everyone
It's
has
so super common.
Yeah.
I think the key is to make sure orally that you're checked. Make sure when you're going to the dentist, when they're checking your teeth for cleaning, make sure they check tonsils, they check everywhere looking for HPV.
Yeah.
Oh,
Same thing when you're doing, obviously.
Dentists can look at it in your
pap
mouth?
smears. Totally. You could do pap smears, cervical pap smears. There's also anal pap smears if you're engaging anally. That entire thing needs to be fully checked and known about. And then obviously there's a vaccine.
I was going to say, so we had a woman write us who was a doctor, and she was like, I'm horrified that you didn't talk about the vaccine when you read that email. And I was like, I mean, I'm not a doctor. It's not the first thing on my mind. Vaccine, yeah. Have you seen cases go down because of that?
Like, I think that at the end of the day, the vaccine is super helpful and super important.
Yeah.
And it used to be up to the age of 26. In the beginning, it was only females. Then it went to males up to the age of 26. Now it's all the way up to the age of 45. And I think specifically in the anal gay space, everybody should get it.
Yeah.
And you don't have all types of HPV that are in the vaccine. So the vaccine can be protective against that. But it also creates an immune response where then your body learns to fight it so that you can definitely combat all of that. And I think that, yes, so you can test it. You should get tested for it if you're engaging in certain acts and going from there.
But if a guy's not engaging in anal and he's just like engaging in like, penis and vagina intercourse, can he still get tested?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's also an oral kind of like a wash that you could do where you literally, the dentist can do it. They'll ask you for saliva, you spit in a tube, and then it'll test you.
Oh.
And then it looks for low and high risk as it relates to that.
Wow.
And a lot of people are just silent carriers.
Right.
And it's not that you necessarily would do anything. That's why a lot of people, it's like, do you really need to get tested? Because at the end of the day, if you're vaccinated, and a lot of people shower post-sex anyway. You can gargle with Listerine orally, which decreases the risk of STDs, especially HPV.
I love
So there's a lot of things that you can do to mitigate. But realistically, knowing that you're HPV low risk positive, does it change anything? It just may kind of fuck up your psyche,
Right. We don't need more of that.
With Listerine, though, I heard someone like a famous person on Instagram had Listerine on her countertop, and everyone was freaking out. Like, I can't believe you're still using Listerine. Is that another substance that kills both the good and bad?
So I think that the reality is that when you look at the studies, it diminished STD risk component, especially orally, right?
Okay.
So after sex, just like anything, if you shower post-sex, soap and water, you can rid yourself of some external components, HPV, herpes, stuff like that, because it takes time to create the inoculum, right?
Okay.
So you can shower. Same thing with the Listerine component.
Okay.
So gargling, 30 seconds. It was only done with Listerine. So, obviously I'm sure you could do all the others.
Right.
But with that being said, it really worked well to diminish that side from an STD perspective.
And you're not worried about killing the good bacteria with it?
Not from an oral perspective, right?
No.
Just because, again, we're eating, we're engaging orally. I think that from that perspective, it creates a good environment. If you're anti-Listerine, then maybe just do it post-oral play.
Okay.
So that, or especially analingus or other things to minimize potential complications.
Huh.
Now, how do you clean your butt before you get freaky with it?
So it depends on what your definition of freaky is, right? But let's talk from an anal penetration perspective. So with Future Method, our first launch was an appropriate anal douche solution. We looked at Fleet enemas. We looked at
with those.
Right. We looked at Fleet. We looked at what's out there. A lot of people are using just water, and we started to analyze that clearly the microbiome is changed. So we said, okay, why don't we put something that cleans but doesn't fuck with the microbiome. We need good and bad bacteria.
Right.
And it's like if you and I are going outside and we just randomly swab 20 random strangers' asses.
Fun.
And I swab their asses for bacteria, I could tell who has anal sacs just from the swab.
Wow.
Wait, looking at it with your naked eye or looking at their
test.
butthole?
No, looking at the test.
Oh, okay.
results.
This
I was
feels like some
bacteria.
kind of a test Republicans are going to use
So-
soon. Like just going around and be like, gotcha.
Totally. So, but Prevotella, which is a bacteria, gets overgrown.
Okay.
And so from douching, from lubricants, especially women vaginally, when you're using water-based lubricants, you change the pH, right? We know the microbiome changes. When you look anally, because of this change, it leads to higher risk of STDs, higher risk of HIV, higher risk of having anal issues.
Okay.
So the key is, how do you think of cleaning as gut health rather than butt
internal
health,
cleaning.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So like, how do we use fiber? How do we use pre and probiotics? How do we get your
Less
Bristol
refined sugar.
Exactly. How do you get yourself so that when you shit, after you poop, you're clean and you feel sexy? Because then you'll know that then you can douche less or not at all.
Right, which would be optimal.
It is optimal. And then our douche solution comes in ready-made and then also like packets, these powder packets, where you literally just put it into the water and mix it. And what it does is it creates an environment that doesn't irritate, it doesn't change the microbiome, but it cleans you. And our bulbs are smaller on purpose because we want people to understand that less is more. Because a lot of people douche and they overdouche, they get a hemorrhoid, they get a tear, even before they had sex, where they just don't feel as if they're completely sexy.
Yeah.
So I think the key is obviously showering, soap and water, get yourself
Eating
feeling,
healthy.
eating healthy. And then if you are douching, understanding the ramifications, products to use, how to support yourself in that way. And then I say to people, like toy play is great. Do toy play on your own.
Yeah.
Because you can see that 9 times out of 10, without douching, you're clean. And that if you are going to engage anally when you're showering, just use a toy. It'll help lubricate you. It'll help dilate you. But when you take it out, you can actually look and be like, oh, I'm actually super clean. And we have a glass anal dilator kit.
Cute.
That's specifically for that, right? That you're able to see, are you clean? How do you pre-lubricate? How do you dilate? All of those components to make it sexy. And then look, if you're eating shit that's going to make you poop and feel not sexy, then maybe it's not a bottoming day for you.
Right.
You know?
Not a bottoming
How do you
day,
say no?
ladies.
Yeah, Taco Bell day, not a bottoming day.
Never a bottoming
Unless they're
day.
actually free. I could totally do it.
But some
'cause-
people like it,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Some people like what? Taco Bell on bottoming day?
Taco Bell on bottoming day and whatever comes with it. I mean,
Wow.
That's a rom-com I'd watch.
Lifetime, your next original Christmas movie, Taco Bell Bottoming Day. I did one time get a colonic, and the woman alluded to the fact that when she sees men who engage in anal sex, meaning they get penetrated, a lot of times their buttholes are actually looser. Why does that happen?
It's
You can blow out your ass, I guess.
so.
And is that the medical terminology that you use in
man,
your,
you got
in
a
your
blown out
practice?
ass.
So I think that looseness or elasticity, right? The reality is that I don't see a lot lot of it, even in the fisting community.
Even in the fisting community?
Yeah, because
Wow.
first of all, fisting community, great community. They
Shout out.
Yes, shout out.
Shout out.
They're so communicative.
Pound it.
They
Yeah.
really are.
you gotta
They
be.
understand the anatomy. They understand how to kind of go the slow and steady way.
Yeah.
Right. And it's over time that they're able to understand their anatomy, that they're able to take the
They're
fist.
fisting themselves?
Well, no, through just like
Fisting somebody else.
Exactly. And or just putting themselves in circles with people that know what the hell they're doing.
Right.
And it's not, oh, I'm just going to stick it in and go crazy.
Yeah.
right?
Now, when you fist an asshole, how much of it, like what shape is your hand actually in and how far does it go up?
So it can go quite far. I think at
Really?
the end of the day, I always look at people's wrists more.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you can navigate like whether or not how you're angling in. But once you're fully, so remember the anatomy.
So I'll look at our wrist. And
Yes,
see.
look,
Yeah.
I can take yours.
Yeah, mine's,
Mine's
well, I was
so
gonna say
little.
mine's tiny. I have like a child's hand.
Well, your hands are
My
super
hand
tiny,
and
and your
wrists are
wrists.
really small.
I got
So you're
ET
perfect,
fingers.
right?
I'm built for the fisting community.
But if you think of the ass, like it kind of, there's 3 sets of muscles.
Okay.
And they're about 5 to 7 centimeters in length. So about like that far.
Yeah.
And then after that, it opens quite big.
whole new
It's a
world.
whole new world.
So yeah, I had a guy reveal this to me once, and I was like, "What?" He was talking about having anal sex with a woman, and he was saying, I was like, "Why do you guys like the butthole so much?" And he's like, "Really? It's just the tabooness of it, because once the penis gets into the butthole, it's like the opening's tight, and then it's just loose space, like throwing a coin down the Lincoln Tunnel." And I'm like, "What the fuck?" So it doesn't seem worth it to me as the
thing
receiver.
is those 3 sets of muscles, those 7 centimeters, the vaginal cavity doesn't have that same feeling.
Okay.
So from a tightness perspective,
you've had both.
Totally.
Which is interesting.
But with that being said, it's a different sensation and a different feel. But it's also, the game of getting in, and it is taboo, and there is that stigma and all of that.
Yeah, and I totally get like, we shouldn't, or no, and I don't know if I like it. And you're like,
But from a looseness perspective, I don't see a huge amount of it. I think that a lot of times I see it with trauma. If someone's forced entry, right?
Oh,
they're
Jesus,
raped,
yeah.
they're in certain situations.
yeah.
There's a lot of people are using drugs into the space, and then your sensorium is so fucked up that you don't know that you're in pain or something is happening.
Drugs into the space, you mean they're actually
Drugs in your butt?
In your butt, or you're taking
just
them
using them.
while they're engaging in
exactly.
sex.
What's poppers?
That's right. So poppers is...
Do they actually make your butthole loose?
Yeah, it's called amyl nitrate, and it's a substance that is called a smooth muscle relaxant.
Oh, I've taken it.
So what
Not
happens?
for butt stuff though, just because I was curious.
But it gets you fucked up, and it's some people love the high.
For super short though period of
I mean,
time.
it felt like my head was on the thing at Party City that they used to fill up balloons.
Totally.
Is it like
It's
a
helium
Whippet?
tank.
It's like Whippets.
Oh,
Yeah.
I've done Whippets.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. But then what happens is the asshole itself, those muscles we spoke about, relax.
Okay.
So when people are using them, similar to how I would give people anal Botox to relax the muscle.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm more of a proponent of anal Botox because at the end of the day, you still feel. You're able to know
Right.
your boundaries.
Yeah.
So I say to people, if you're taking drugs, I'm all for drugs and chem sex, totally fine as long as it's safe. But make sure
we're calling it chem sex
Yes,
now.
But make
I like
sure
that.
That's why we got to bring a doctor to the party.
Fucking nerds.
chem sex. But make sure that you can take whatever you want to take, not on the chem. Because I want to make sure that
You
it's
actually
a safe
want it.
component, right?
Yeah.
But think about the anal muscles. The anal muscles that are there, the pelvic floor, has so much muscular components to it.
Right.
That
A lot of woven together
And especially
things.
in the male side, there's so much extra muscle there that you have so much room to engage and be comfortable sexually and not shit yourself, right?
Nice.
So when you see the people with the colonics, it's because most bottoms or people or guys that are engaging anally learn how to control all 3 muscles that they're able to fully open.
Oh, okay.
That she's like, oh, they're looser. But if that person was on the street and their anal cavity would be completely closed and in a good space, they're able to control it versus like a straight guy that's like, this is my first colonic, never had anything in my ass. He's fucking tight as anything. He ain't letting that thing in.
Right.
I don't know why straight boys are like that.
Yeah, the first time I ever explored prostate milking with a guy or like prostate stimulation, I was like, whoa, this is wild. And then it like perplexed me that men, like straight men mostly, are like so adverse to it and so like freaked out. It's just, if you don't know, it's terrifying. Like I do get that.
I think there's a lot of ingrained homophobia there
Yeah,
too.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. It's like, my ass is off limits.
Sure.
And it's like, yeah, but all right. And then most of them love that shit.
Yeah.
When they finally say, well, wait a second, there's pleasure there. I don't need to identify as homosexual. I can be a hetero guy that's into any type of play.
Yeah.
And kind of push the envelope in the correct direction. Because
Right.
prostate orgasms, you're not going to get that to that degree without going in the butt.
Yeah, you got to go in. You got to go in. You got to go in. I'm curious about your personal life.
Sure.
So you were married.
Yep.
And
To a woman.
A woman, how would you, when at the point that you got married, how would you have labeled your sexuality at that point?
I was bisexual, and I
Okay.
still think I can kind of go both ways.
Yeah?
I really just think that I fall in love with who's in the trajectory of where my life weaves. At
So
that
what is
time.
that? Pansexual?
Well,
Just falling in love with the person?
is including trans people. That's
okay.
why that the
So just
pan
the
is. That's what makes pan different from bi. It's a more inclusive word.
I see.
But now
okay.
I like dick a lot.
Yeah, more than yeah.
Yeah, but I think, my generation, it was like, internalized homophobia,
Totally.
externalized homophobia. No one said to me, like, Evan, you're Evan, it's cool, who cares?
Right.
And and then I was also, as a surgeon, you're in this like all boys club
Yeah.
of like, crazy camaraderie stuff that has nothing to do with, there's no gay in that, right? There's no homosexuality in that. So it was a lot till finally I was like, this can't go on. I'm gonna like either kill myself or explode.
Well,
or
yeah,
have
whenever you
issues.
put
and it was just
blanket
that.
over that.
And then, so we, I ended that relationship, and I've been with Andy, my partner now, for 18 years. We have two kids together.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So it's been an interesting ride, but I'm not in that much of a different relationship after, when
Seems like you like monogamy.
I do like monogamy.
But when you were identifying it as bisexual and entering into the marriage with the woman, I'm curious about having a discussion, or if there was a discussion at all about, did you have a plan that you could only engage in monogamy? Or how did that go? Because I think that confuses a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I think at that time I was not so into my own feelings at that time.
Yeah.
Right? Where I was able to say, okay, am I really bi? Am I gay? Am I just holding on to this because I'm scared to enter into that? But when I entered into the relationship, it was known that I had relations with guys and girls, but that this was where I wanted to be and the path.
Yeah.
Right.
And then it just wasn't really 100%. I mean, it wasn't like I wasn't in that relationship 100%, and she deserved 100%.
Yeah.
And I mean, she's amazing and a beautiful person. And so at the end of the day, it was kind of like, look, you deserve everything.
Right.
And that's not going to be me.
Right.
And how do we just kind of figure out moving forward from there?
How did that conversation go?
Oh,
Yeah. So, I mean, it's in one's life, you will have so many difficult conversations that you're like, oh, I got to deliver news that you don't want to hear.
You're not gonna
And
love
you
this.
just have to, that's where your character really comes out, in these moments where it gets tested like that. How was that with you? Like, what was going on in your head, and how long before you told her that, like, you're like, because you fell in love with a man, and you're like, I gotta go.
Yeah.
Did you fall in love with your partner, or did you fall in love with
I fell in love with
okay.
Andy. It was terrible 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years. 2 years. Shit,
Well,
man.
it was just like going through all of that stuff, and then, yeah. Oh,
And it's
man.
got
You're gonna
like
have to
as
wait
a
till my
partner,
second
like
book. That's a second book.
well, it's like a blow, like such a big blow that a lot of people have experienced. That they've either been on one side of it or the other. Of like, somebody's leaving you because they fell in love with somebody else, and then you have to contend with the heartache of the relationship ending. But then the fact that they're already out, they have one foot out the door, and they're kind of like with somebody, and then you just
Well, I think it wound up being more that my parents, I was losing weight, I was sick all the time, and I just was so stressed.
'Cause you
that
weren't being yourself?
Correct. And then so my mom called me, and she was like, I have a
What's
list
up?
of certain things that we may think is happening. Can you let us know? 'Cause
Wow.
I'm not like a crazy vocal person about my own issues. So number one was, do you have cancer or HIV, or are you dying?
Wow.
And then number two is, are you gay? And then I still remember exactly where I was, because I was in Maryland. I was in a trauma center, and I literally just lost it.
Oh, wow.
And then my mom was like, we're coming down, and then just hung up the phone.
Were you relieved?
And then I was, totally.
Yeah.
That I was able to now but I had
truthful.
so many things to process and figure out. And it wasn't fair to Andy. Clearly it wasn't fair to my wife at the
Right.
time. And it was like, do I come out and be who I am alone with me for a little while? Or
Right.
do I head into the relationship? And I head
Oh my gosh.
to this relationship, and should I have not have? There's all these things, but you just got to ride.
There's no wrong answer.
No,
you just do what you're going to do, and then you take it from there. Really,
Totally.
but like, what a multifaceted amount of feelings you had to process.
Totally. And
So
then it was
well, I was gonna say, did Andy do a lot of work in assisting you?
Yes.
Because I mean, he's there
left
for.
me. He actually left me
Okay.
during this and was
Oh,
like,
Jesus Christ.
dude, you need to get your shit together. Like,
Yeah.
you have like 3 options. You can either go back to straight world and live that, which if that's what you want to do. You can come out and be gay alone and not with me and experience life, or you can come out and be with me. And I chose him at that time, even though I looked for other apartments. I was like, I really should just be alone.
It's like your heart knows I need to go on this
Yeah.
journey by myself, but goddamn, I want someone by my side because it's hard.
And I didn't know if I'd ever find anybody as good as him, because now, even looking at it 18 years later, I still think I did make the right choice.
Yeah, clearly. I mean,
he is, the rock of everything. But it was tough. It was a tough 2 years.
So he left you for how long?
It was
for the 2 years?
No. It was for a month. It was
Okay.
like 6 weeks to,
Wow.
as I was working through this, trying to figure out.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
But a lot of emotion.
How'd your wife, does your wife, was there resentment? Was there like, where are you now? Like, do you still speak with each other?
We are super cordial, and I wish that I'd have more of a relationship, but it's
Yeah.
very hard. It's
Yeah.
hard because there was still so much love and so much love on my end too, that it's just not an easy.
Yeah.
It just adds another layer of complexity to two people's worlds that it's
Totally.
just right now is probably not worth that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, heart, matters of the heart, man. So
But it was
complicated.
there was so many positives, and so many positives for both of us in terms of we were both training together. Like, I don't know if she would have gotten to where she was if we weren't working in the same capacity to help each other. It was
Yeah.
like,
There's certainly benefits.
it was benefits. There was so much to that. I just, it just wound up being, again, I always say the dick always wins.
That's society always says that too.
The dick always, yeah, I guess that's true. But, the dick leads the way, and sex is so important.
In terms of like, where your
what your
decision
preference
making.
is and your decision making.
Yeah.
You could say all you want, but if you're walking down the street and you're excited about what and that,
Yeah.
at some point you're gonna.
Yeah,
make
and it's
that
like,
happen.
my God, you can't put a cap over any part of yourself, right? But when you try to put a cap over your sexuality, like a fire blanket over your sexuality, I mean, that's going to explode.
Yeah, it was
it's
like
going to
this,
explode.
this Japanese client of mine who I had to tighten his ass. Because
Wow,
he
you
was,
could do that?
Because he was so into
Wow.
anal play.
Yeah.
And he was then arranged marriage.
Shit.
And he was like, sleeping, and he would like pass gas a little bit or feel like he was looser and not as secure. So I operated on him. I fixed him.
Oh,
but I
wow.
said, you're still going to want dick in your ass. I said, no matter what I do.
Did he?
Yeah.
Was he arranged marriage with a woman?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
so you
terrible.
feel like, what are you going to do? So I said to him,
Say
look,
no.
You need to. And so like a lot of these excerpts are in the book of
Yeah.
like saying, different tales, obviously from women to men to hetero that want to engage anally to gays that all of that type of stuff is in there that really starts to look at a lot of this. Not only are we talking about how do you engage anally, how do you clean, fiber, all the stuff we mentioned, but also emotionally and trying to figure out like how do you put together your entire kind of understanding of where you want to go sexually from a desire perspective
Yeah.
to actually living it.
Yeah. Well, the butthole is one of the great common denominators. We all have one, regardless
Yeah.
of your gender. Regardless, whatever gender you are, you most likely have a butthole.
Oh, that's true. I mean, have you ever met anyone that didn't have
A
a way to like excrete?
So some
die,
kids
right?
are
Well, I guess if you can't excrete, yeah.
so some kids are born with this condition where the butthole didn't meet the anal
Oh no!
cavity.
So they
they
can't-
have like a pouch that's there, but you catch it quite early that you can repair that.
Oh, that's good.
So
Okay.
but there's complications depending upon that and the degree of that. But sometimes with cancers, you have to have things removed and sewn up.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the stuff that I see also is like people with inflammatory bowels or Crohn's or colitis where they want to engage anally. but there's issues, right? Whether it's not clean, whether it's blood, whether it's irritation. So a lot of it is kind of figuring out like how do we navigate all those things so that people can do what they want.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
And you mentioned chemsex a little bit before, which I think is interesting for, even for a doctor to speak about like, yeah, I'm like cool with drugs and sex. Cause we know doctors are, but I like that you're open about it.
Yeah, you're honest.
Yeah, I mean, doctors, in my experience, use more drugs than actually anyone else, which is like, which makes sense because you understand them better than anyone else.
That's true.
But
you know what's happening in your body.
Are there certain drugs that we're saying like, yes, good for sex, and then some drugs that are no? I mean, what are your thoughts about like risks for things like poppers? I want to just say because the things that people are using, I'm pretty into psychedelics, but most people are doing like things like coke and like what is what is the safety and what are the best drugs to use when engaging in chemsex, which I'm going to say from now on.
I love that term.
So I think the realistic picture is that right now, especially in New York, fentanyl is a huge issue, right?
Yeah.
Where the dosings and everything in coke and pills. So I'm a huge proponent of saying, dude, you guys got to really know what you're taking and being tested and putting yourself in a situation. Everyone should have Narcan that's there.
Yes.
Right.
And put yourself into a situation where everyone knows what is potentially happening. I think that every single drug, if you've done too much of it, can fuck with you in some capacity anally. Obviously, we see a lot of meth use, specifically in the gay space. A lot of crystal, and it destroys people. But that high, that sex, that gangbang, like I can go for fucking ever.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, because when you get these people off the drug, their sex is never the same. They just can't get to where they need to be.
Yeah.
Like I'm someone that meets people where they are.
Yeah.
Right. And that was with BeSpoke Surgical, my practice, with Future Method, it's like you can say all you want, like, hey, I don't agree with anal or all these components, but people are having it.
Right.
And if people are having it, we have a duty, literally,
to help them.
to help people and provide them with education, products, support. If something were to go wrong, how do we now provide those resources so people have access to that? Obviously people are using the typical, whether it's alcohol or weed, right? A lot of the popper stuff, people know that it relaxes them anally. Yeah. So that really helps in that capacity.
Yeah.
A lot of the other drugs, people can't get hard.
Right.
And it becomes, but with that being said, a lot of times with the bottoms, they don't necessarily need to get off from the front. They're just having those sensations in that space there. So I don't want to be skirting your question, but I think
it's okay.
I think again on a drug perspective.
I mean, you can't look at the camera and be like, coke is great for sex. I'm a doctor, trust me.
I think that anything that's going to enhance your world, I'm all for it.
Sure.
It's making sure it's a safe situation, you have an out, and that you know what you're getting, and that it's as safe as it possibly can be. And it's like less is always more, right? You could always titrate. I think people always get a little bit
It's hard to go back once you've taken
And then
too
the
much.
other drugs, I'm not a huge proponent of the drugs that make you addicts, but the reality is they're there, and how do we support that?
Yeah.
Is there a place that you recommend people use to test their drugs? Because I feel like the thing with me is like every time I am like, oh, I should test this, I realize that it's something I have to order online and I'm not going to get it in time. It's not like
you never want to test the drug in advance enough to get the testing equipment.
Like I don't do coke, but I bring Narcan to every single comedy festival that I attend, and like there was the first time I looked for it was actually really hard to get. There were certain cities that didn't sell it, but then it got so popular that people, that they were selling it at Target, and I just ordered it from Target.com.
Can you sniff it, Narcan?
Yeah, it's basically a nasal spray.
Yeah, nasal, like
they're out, they're completely out, and then you spray. But they wake up, they're not happy people. But they're combative. They're like,
I know, do it from the side so they don't whack you.
You got to be careful.
They're irritable.
Totally irritable. But I think hopefully, especially in New York and all these major cities, London was doing it since I was a kid, where you can go to the when you're at the club, they would, take a piece and test it.
Right.
So I think Europe is definitely much more progressive as it relates to that, but it should be, right? I mean, it should be easily accessible and easily, but you're right. A lot of it is going to be where you have to plan ahead and have kits at home to test it.
Yeah.
And you would think that the drug dealers that make this shit, but the thing is that people, I thought that it would diminish their purchasers.
Sure.
But it's not. Because people are searching for that crazy fucking high. And they know that if that guy has that they can go further. So people buy more of it.
Jeez.
So
Right.
you just got to be super
Louise.
careful.
Well, and then you do hear of people every now and then doing fentanyl recreationally.
Ooh.
How is that? When it's just, I guess it's just hard
How
for
can
me
you
to
dose it out?
understand. I'm like a real naive when it comes to these types of drugs. I really only know about psychedelics. So like, how are people even doing something that dangerous recreationally?
It just winds up being on the dosing side.
So you need like a crumb
when you're
of
on
it, right?
pills or when you're snorting, you don't actually know the dosing. It's like back in the day when we would do like, THC or acid chocolates.
Right.
And the one person that got the corner that was like all the acid, right?
shit.
They were fucking flipping out.
okay.
Where everybody else was like, dude,
I don't feel anything.
shit.
Yeah.
Same concept.
Okay.
So I think
Jesus.
it's all dosing accordingly. But I'm super happy that like ketamine and acid are now being much more
I'm getting a ketamine infusion
prescribed.
tomorrow.
And that I think is going to be really great because it really allows, for one, it helps with depression and anxiety and a lot of other components, but it also kind of allows people to be in safe spaces, controlled,
that's the
and
big
able
thing.
to get where they want to go.
Yeah, I really wish our society was one that respected substances and like the power of them and what they can do and where they can take you and what ways they can open your mind up without having this. Yeah,
We
there's
always
just-
said that. I always say that if they just put it in the cereal that you put up your ass, the entire world would be a much better place.
I was like, I wish we could go and every country that's currently at war, just give them clouds of ecstasy and they would drop the gun and they would go, why would I ever want to kill somebody else? That's awful.
That's right. That's right. So drugs are super important.
Right. I mean, well, because even with ketamine, like I love that it's being introduced in therapy settings, but I also know so many people who do ketamine recreationally and they're just in a fucking K-hole dead behind the eyes. Like,
Yeah, that's wild.
Totally. I mean, you see them on the
Wild.
street here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's scary.
Yeah.
It's super scary stuff.
yeah. Well,
Wait, you brought us goodies.
oh shit, we didn't do that thing. Yeah.
What did you bring us? We're going to do an unbagging. Okay. So this is your company,
Yeah,
Future
so-
Method, butt and body scrub. Oh, I love a scrub.
So but what part of the butt are we scrubbing?
Do
The
I scrub my
outside
It's a
or
button
Oh.
body. You don't go in with it.
Right,
But
okay.
obviously
No, okay,
the
good to
external,
know, good
it's
to know,
got,
good to know.
a lot of people use silicone-based lube, specifically for anal.
maybe just
So-
a note I would write for the future.
Not for your hole.
Don't go in with it.
Don't go in there.
It says it. Don't worry.
Disposable anal douche solution. Okay.
So here,
Hell yeah.
I'll
Is that
open
good
it.
for you even if you don't engage in anal?
Well, so, I
play,
mean, I
or-
think it just depends on what you're trying to achieve. If you're
Clean asshole.
constipated and you're clean,
Yeah, I've used a Fleet enema before because I've been constipated since I was a
Totally.
child.
So it comes in these pouches. So
Ooh,
the solution,
that's cute.
The solution inside, and you can
like a
use
Capri Sun.
a
love
bulb
Capri
that's
Sun.
there.
Oh,
so the
cute.
bulb goes directly into this. So
And is that
allows-
saline water?
So it's a mixture that we've made that is the right composition. So it's what's called isotonic.
Okay.
So what it does is it doesn't interfere, like we said, with that microbiome.
Wow.
So, and in it has a cleansing solution.
Oh, I hope this is jewelry for the
Bedside
butt. Oh, it
manner.
feels heavy.
No, it's just
Very
a
heavy. Is
candle.
this a glass dildo?
Oh,
it's a
just
candle.
It's just a candle.
But that scent is the same
it smells
scent
nice.
that we use for the scrub and the soothing cream.
Ooh, a rousing
so remember,
blend
the
of citrus,
anal
cloves.
cavity
This is
itself.
classy.
This is a gorgeous candle.
It's called
Thanks.
bedside manner. I like that. I have none, but I
needs
appreciate the reminder.
Yeah.
But the button body scrub and the soothing cream, it doesn't only need to be with anal sex. Obviously, we get irritated, we overwipe.
Yeah.
The key is how do we create appropriate hygiene in the space?
Yeah.
Right? And with that, and then also we want moisturizer, but we don't want too much moisture.
Right.
Especially in that area.
Right.
So the key is we want something to moisturize, but then dry.
Yeah.
And so be naked a little bit, let it breathe, shower at night. All these tales, everything that we're talking about are in the book.
Yeah.
Goes over everything in terms of kind of the how-to, the myths, the taboos, and how to take it up the ass like a pro. And then if you
Absolutely.
don't, and you want to, how do we look at certain ways, especially people that don't have access to the care? How do we look at ways that you can use toys and try to understand your anatomy to figure out, can you get there? Do you need help, like at our practice at BeSpoke Surgical, a physical therapist, pelvic floor therapist? So
Ooh,
it
nice.
goes into a lot of the details.
That's amazing. And then one last quick question from me personally. How long is too long to be wiping your butt? Because, man, sometimes I'm just like, it's a lot of time.
Yeah.
It's a lot of time.
I would say, like, if you're not 2 to 3 wipes
Whoa.
of, hey, and I don't love wiping, even though we spoke about the wipes, I love more padding. Because remember, the skin is so thin to the front and the back.
Right.
So obviously, and women are wiping front to back, right?
Of course. Oh, yes, we are.
With that being said, that skin gets so irritating. You know, there's the line that connects the vagina and kind of the clitoris to the anal cavity. There's a line. That is so thin that if you're over wiping that, so the key really is bidet or pat. If you're doing 3, 4, 5 wipes, like I would say,
That's
just
nothing.
like pop in the shower. I mean, you
Okay.
know, and like really create an environment that's a little bit more, and then work on the diet and all
Right.
of that side of things to make it better.
Yeah.
Because the over wiping, and then like you feel like you got to shit
takes
2
so
hours
long.
after, and then it's a pain in
Yeah.
the process.
Yeah, and I always wonder, like, dogs never have to wipe their butt, but they don't have butt cheeks. So it's like, I wonder if when you poop,
Does it get
Well, yeah,
stuck?
who's horny, if you spread it when you poop, less wiping, I imagine.
I think it's just more the consistency.
Okay.
And do you get it all out?
Right.
Right? You
Right.
want the 100% out.
Yeah,
If
oh,
there's
yeah,
like
yeah.
a little bit
Yeah,
remnant
dangling,
there,
you don't want that.
then it's a big problem.
Yeah. Wow, this has been amazing. Thank you so much and where can we find you?
Sure.
You know,
Obviously.
promote, baby.
Yeah.
But seriously comes out May 28th by Dr. Evan
Yeah,
Goldstein.
so
Get a
all the
copy.
social channels, Dr. Evan Goldstein on Instagram and all that is me, my kids, ass plus twins and,
Nice.
and a partner.
Do you have twins?
Yeah, we have 2 boys.
Oh,
they're
that's so
12.
nice.
BeSpoke Surgical is the private practice, and in that goes over all the ailments, all the issues, and then obviously Future Method. It's the Future Method on Instagram, but futuremethod.com goes over all the aspects. And then butseriously.com. Check it out. I'm super proud of it. And also, it's just starting to have the conversation in the world.
Yeah.
I think that it's taken me 15 years to finally get to the spot where you can actually talk about it. So
Nice.
I'm curious to see where it goes.
Well, that's what made us, reach out to you. We're like, well, this guy seemingly knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So let's call him up.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you. I
Great.
appreciate it.
This has been Guys We Fuck, the anti-slut shaming podcast. We will talk to you next Friday.